Welcome to the Health on Track podcast. Let's talk well-being.
Welcome to the Health on Track podcast, offering you a shot of wellness. I'm Yasmin, the Member Engagement and Communications Manager at GIG Gulf Insurance. Narcissism is one of those words that has suddenly become very popular. But is it correct, and is everyone that is simply looking out for themselves really a narcissist? Probably not, but let's understand more from the expert. Joining us today is Dr. Tobias Buzello, a distinguished German board-certified psychiatrist from German Neuroscience Center in Dubai. Dr. Tobias stands at the forefront of mental health care with an impressive 20-year professional journey. He is committed to offering cutting-edge diagnostics and treatments within the realm of psychiatry and psychotherapy. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Tobias.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on this topic today.
Of course. So can you tell us what is narcissism?
So when we talk about narcissism, we are basically talking about a specific set of personality traits, which on the one hand consist of this idea of a very high self-importance. So these people tend to expect special treatment, see themselves often superior to others. On the other hand, they very often lack empathy or the ability to show empathy to others. Now, narcissism comes in a spectrum. So if on the lower side of the spectrum, you find the normal personality traits. So we all have certain personality traits, some more emphasized than others, that make us the person who we are. If the emphasis on in a person is on the narcissistic side, then that's just a normal character trait with a narcissistic tendency. On the next level of this spectrum, you would find the personality accentuation. That would basically mean that the narcissistic tendencies are very pronounced. So most people who have contact to this person notice these tendencies, but they don't yet cause severe problems in everyday life. And on the far end of the spectrum, you have the narcissistic personality disorder. So that is actually a diagnosis according to the diagnostic manuals, whether it's ICD-10 or DSM-5. And one defining criteria is that the narcissistic personality traits cause problems in daily living, whether it's private life or work life.
Is there a statistic like how many people are actual narcissists? They don't have just the tendencies, but like the people at the top of the spectrum?
I don't think there actually is really a representative statistics, because the thing with narcissists, but we'll get to that later, is that most of them never seek treatment, so they would never show up in any statistics.
They cause other people to seek treatment.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I wouldn't know any numbers on that right now, and I don't think there is a valid statistics on that. That is actually representative for general population.
Okay. So is narcissism something that, like, is it genetic, people are born with it, or is it something that's kind of picked up along the way?
See, so for most psychiatric conditions or illnesses, we think that they develop through something that is called a stress vulnerability hypothesis. So all of us, we carry the genetic codes of hundreds and hundreds of illnesses within us. So that's not only limited to psychiatric illnesses, it's also regarding high blood pressure, diabetes, certain types of cancer, but also, like you mentioned, psychiatric illnesses. However, when it comes to the personality disorders, there might be some genetic dispositions that can increase the risk for the development of these, but much more important are the conditions or the ways we are being brought up. So our early biography and what happens in the phase where our personality is developed, that is what is of the biggest importance when it comes to the development of personality disorders.
So there aren't like narcissistic babies. It's just like they could have become narcissists, but then because the parenting and kind of lifestyle around them kind of provoked that out of them?
Well, of course, every baby is self-centered, but that's a mode of survival. That's not narcissism. So usually I would say no. You are not born being a narcissist. It is, in the end, a way that you cope with unmet emotional needs throughout your childhood and your youth, maybe.
So what kind of conditions in someone's early life would result them into becoming a narcissist?
All right. So I think we all know, or parents usually know, what is beneficial for the children and what is not. So if a child grows up in a good, normal environment, meaning it has a mother, it has a father figure, the parents get along with one another, you are being raised by normal standards, meaning you are praised if you're doing something right, you are criticized if you're doing something wrong, if you get to learn boundaries, get to learn to have respect to other people, to show empathy. Having siblings, by the way, that helps a lot as well.
I was just thinking,
Yes.
is it like do lonely or like only children have more predisposition to become a narcissist in the future? Because they kind of get all the attention from their parents and then they just grow up thinking like the world revolves around me in a way.
That happens if you praise your children for everything they do and never set boundaries, never set limits, never criticize them if they do something wrong. What you need to find is the right balance. But it usually takes more than the absence of this perfect standard to develop a personality disorder. So usually in the early biography of these people, you find things like neglect, abuse, that then develops in this mode of coping somehow with this lack of self-confidence. So through their personal development, they were never able to develop an amount of self-confidence that would stabilize them. So usually they would need to receive it from somewhere else. And thus these people who suffer from a narcissistic personality disorder constantly need to receive praise and admiration from the outside to stabilize their self-confidence.
Okay. So is narcissism something that can be treated or altered?
It can be treated. Actually, altered is the better word, because it is very difficult to change the personality of a person. What you can do is raise the awareness that the way they interact with others can cause problems, and that it might be helpful for the person itself, but also for others, to change some of those behaviors. The hardest part, however, is to raise the awareness that there's something wrong, because by nature, the narcissist has difficulties accepting that there is anything wrong with him. Usually he sees the mistakes or the problem in the others and not within himself. So what you would expect from him is to acknowledge that just the way he is wrong, or there's something not okay with him, and he needs to change, although he has been living his entire life being the person he is. Part of that being that person is thinking of yourself that you are unfailable, that you are pretty much perfect.
I'm always right.
I'm always right. So now that person is supposed to go into psychotherapy, and that is not very compatible with a picture that he has of himself. So in this therapy, he will be criticized, he will be or he will have to learn to accept that he is not perfect, that his self-perception has been wrong through pretty much his entire life. So the first step, getting him to seek treatment, is the hardest part. And that's not what is being done by the psychiatrist or the psychologist. That is usually achieved by someone in the surroundings of this person. And then the difficult part is going to be to keep up the motivation to go to therapy, because we are talking about a very long-term approach, often throughout years. And usually the conditions that lead to the acceptance of a necessity of psychotherapy is that otherwise this person would lose something that is very dear to him. That can be personal success, at work, that can be economical success, but mostly it's a partnership.
Yeah. So you mentioned that there's like a spectrum and that some people can just have narcissistic tendencies,
Yes.
where others are like full-blown narcissists. What is the threshold? How do you say that this person just has some tendencies that kind of can be edited, or this person is a complete narcissist?
Usually, the important defining criteria also that leads to the necessity of treatment is the damage that is caused by these personality traits to the person himself or to others. So if there is a person who is a fully blown narcissist, but he is happy with the way he lives, maybe because he's a narcissist, he is very successful in what he does. As long as it doesn't harm anyone, why would he need to change?
Yeah.
So usually the most important part to actually seek treatment is if it causes problems in the person's life or other people's lives.
We spoke about how certain upbringing conditions can cause someone to develop narcissistic tendencies or become a narcissist in the future. Is this also true for like something that happens while they're adults? So if someone is in a position of power, can they then become a narcissist, even if this happens while after they've already developed?
Well, first of all, many people are in a position of power because they have narcissistic personality traits.
Yes.
So if you look at higher ranking management positions in show business, you will find a high percentage of narcissists than in general population. So it is not always a disadvantage to be a narcissist. Then now, of course, if you have narcissistic tendencies anyway, they would show more in positions of power, because if you are in a position of power, it is much more difficult to criticize you. So you are much more likely to receive praise, to receive admiration, which then again fosters narcissistic tendencies. But that only emphasizes what has been there before. So just entering a position of power does not usually turn you into a narcissist if you haven't been one before.
So you already had like the seed
Yes.
that then just kind of grew.
Right, is on the right nourishing ground to blossom, yeah.
Okay. And how can we deal with narcissists in our lives?
Well, it really depends on the relationship you have to this narcissist. If it's just a short-term contact, of course, it is easy just to avoid. If it is through work or through personal relationship, and you cannot really avoid it, one thing you can do is try to set clear boundaries. Tell him what's okay, tell him what is not okay. Another thing you can do is avoid going into power struggles or arguments. If your opposite is a real narcissist, he will never accept that he is wrong. So save that energy, it just doesn't have a point.
Yeah, but then sometimes you really can't. Like there's a book about children who grew up with narcissistic mothers, for example,
Yes.
or if someone is in a relationship with their narcissistic partner or
Yes.
siblings, and it's just like that person is really in your life. You
Yes.
can't avoid them. You can't.
Yes.
So
Of course, if you are a child and it is your mother who is narcissistic, there is not that much you can do.
yeah.
Usually, the point where they are willing to change is when they would lose something. For example, if the impact on the family is so big that the father is filing for divorce, or the mother, or whatever, and then is taking one of the children with him. So usually they have to be confronted with a huge loss in their life to accept, okay, there is something wrong in my behavior and I need to change. But again, then to apply those changes and to learn how to change, that is going to be a long-term approach. So yes, that is very difficult, and that's why so many partnerships that have a narcissistic person in them break up.
Do you think that society kind of empowers narcissists or nurtures them in a way? Because we give like positive or praise to people in power, people who kind of have their way or get what they want, even if it's like a simple sales negotiation and you were able to get what you want, and then that's considered a success, but maybe it's also a sign of narcissism?
Well, of course, we always look up to people who are successful. And like I mentioned earlier, there is a high degree or a higher percentage of narcissists in successful and powerful people. It's a fact. On the other hand, we are living in times where, for the first time, other than in previous generations, everyone has the power to present himself on social media in a way that appeals to an ideal that is very hard to fulfill. So if you have a look on what's going on Instagram, Facebook, how people present themselves, that is an ideal that can hardly be really achieved and sustained. So you have to be good looking, you have to be wealthy, you have to be successful in your job, you have to have the perfect partner, you have to have the perfect kids. Everything has to be perfect. No room for failure at all. And of course, this is being transported through the smartphones in our kids' room. And those are the ideals they grow up by. Of course, you can find other contents on social media as well, but you would actually have to actively look for them. And so the younger generation is growing up with this ideal of a self-centered, egocentric lifestyle. And that has not been the case before. So yes, our society fosters this narcissistic tendencies for sure. Also look at role models of children, whether it's movie stars, stars in showbiz in general. If you look at the red carpet at the Academy Awards, it is full of narcissists. Because how would you be a good actor if you don't have narcissistic tendencies? You have to love being in front of a camera. You have to love to present yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Does narcissism relate to any other mental disorders?
Oh, absolutely. So as long as the narcissist can receive the admiration, the success, the praise that stabilizes him, at least from his point of view, everything is good. But usually that never goes well throughout an entire life. So at some point, this receiving of self-confidence will stop, whether it's due to a divorce, due to loss of job, which is not compatible with the picture that you have of yourself. And if then the influx of self-confidence is not given anymore, what's left is an empty shell, because this person has never had this intrinsic sense of self-confidence. And then that, of course, can lead to depressive episodes, anxiety, and secondary psychiatric conditions.
Okay. So as a psychiatrist, what is the biggest challenge that you encounter when treating or dealing with a narcissist?
So the biggest challenge is the one we never encounter, which is
We don't know. They don't come.
seeking medical help in the first place. So that is the challenge of the people who deal with this person in everyday life. When they show up for treatment, the most challenging part is to keep them going to therapy throughout this very long process, since it is just something they don't want to do, because it is opposed to everything they thought of themselves until then. So they will actually have to reflect on themselves. They would have to accept criticism. They would have to accept that they failed in certain aspects of their life, which they quite often have never done before.
So you're kind of breaking them down and then building them up again in a way.
Not necessarily breaking them down. What we are trying to achieve is to raise an awareness for the dysfunctional behaviors, and we are trying to modify these behaviors to more functional ones, and trying to make them aware of the fact that these changes will enable them to lead a much more sustainable life, because like I mentioned earlier, no one will ever receive praise and admiration throughout his entire life. Sooner or later, he will fail, but by the time that they come to us, they have encountered already some sort of loss or something that actually made them realize I have to go for therapy because there is something wrong, or I'm going to lose my wife, I'm going to lose contact to my children, I'm going to lose a business partner, whatever it is.
So are there medications that you use, or is it just like therapy, behavioral therapy?
So the personality disorders in general are a domain of behavioral therapy or psychotherapy in general. If throughout the course you encounter symptoms of depression or anxiety, then you can additionally treat these with a medication, but with that you just treat the symptoms and you don't have this sustainable approach that you would try to achieve the changes in behavior with.
Are there some lifestyle activities or behaviors that can kind of support the therapy?
Well, I would say a healthy lifestyle in general, comprising a healthy diet, working out, work-life balance can help. And especially work-life balance can be an issue with people with narcissistic tendencies or narcissistic personality disorder, because their success at work is very important for them to stabilize their self-confidence. So they quite often work harder than others to climb up the career ladder, which they eventually do. But it comes at a price.
But like, would we encourage them to kind of go more into the community, do some charity work with teams, sports teams, maybe that kind of help them to
That can
deal
help
with others a bit?
Yeah, well, the thing is, they deal with others a lot. They usually have a lot of social contacts. They need to
get the validation that they
to
need.
get the feedback, the positive feedback that they're always seeking for. Of course, if you engage into charity work, that can actually improve your ability to show empathy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
like charity, or maybe if you're in a sports team and you're forced to put...
Yes, you have to be a team player.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah, that can help as well.
Okay, great. We talked a lot about childhood and that, you know, the upbringing and conditions can either result in narcissistic tendencies. What is your advice to parents?
Usually by nature, parents know what is good for their children and what is not. I would say all mammals know that. By nature, we have our instincts. And we know that if a child constantly watches his parents fighting, that's not good. We know that abuse, neglect is not helpful. So as long as you have a relatively normal family system that this child grows up in, you're not very likely to develop a personality disorder or a narcissistic personality disorder in that case. You still can have narcissistic personality traits. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like we all have our personality traits. Even within one in the same family, you can have one child that has narcissistic traits and on the other child or a sibling is more of an introvert. That's completely normal and absolutely okay. But try to have a normal, structured family life. Try to avoid, of course, I guess you always try to avoid trauma, but, you know.
Yeah, and don't praise them too much on everything.
Praise them, don't praise them too much on everything. Also criticize them if they are doing things wrong. Set boundaries, set limits, teach them respect, teach them empathy. Yeah,
Okay.
Pets can help.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so
If you can show
little kittens
empathy
then.
to a pet and learn to be, you know, to take care of a pet, that's helpful.
Okay. Any other advice you have for everyone listening, or any misconceptions you would like to debunk?
For sure. So if you talk about someone being a narcissist, what you have to consider is your own point of view. So, for example, if I am an introvert myself, and there is someone who is more of an extrovert or has some narcissistic tendencies, and then maybe is better looking than me, maybe he is more successful than me, then I have to find a mechanism to cope with that, to deal with that. So it's very easy for me to, oh yeah, look at this narcissist, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that this person is a narcissist. Another misconception is that narcissism is always destructive. It's not. It can be actually a very powerful tool in the right surroundings. Just mentioned show business, politics, higher management positions. If you are an introvert there, you will probably not survive very long. You have to be egocentric. You have to be self-focused to survive in these surroundings. So yeah, those are common misconceptions.
So it's like a superpower in a way. So just don't use that superpower for bad.
As long as you can harness it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So don't become Thanos, stay Iron Man. Sorry, I have
guess.
to.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. It
Okay.
can be, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Tobias. This was a very interesting discussion.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
It was my
you.
pleasure.
To all our audience, we hope you now know how to identify the true narcissists in your life and how you can protect your mental health from them. In case you forgot, we're available on YouTube, video and music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anghami, and Amazon Music. Stay well and keep thriving.